Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and I trust you're fine.
Good afternoon.
Um, as I apologize for last week. It was under circumstances I couldn't control. You know, when your health says no, sometimes you can't just do anything about it. But
Yeah,
thanks God, yeah.
sorry.
I was on campus anyway, and I drove back home to teach, only for me to realize that no. I had to go to the hospital again, but I'm fine. I trust those who are not well to be fine.
Amen.
So let's begin. Last week I said last 2 weeks we had an introduction of what public administration um is, and we realized that it's quite difficult to define public administration, but we looked at the various perspectives or various ways to try to understand public administration. So we try to understand by segregating the word public from administration. And then we also try to, where we realize that whatever is public is what is common to people. Ad plus ministry means to serve people. So trying to serve them the public good. Okay, and we also realize that public administration also had to do with what the executive function does, that's implementing government and policies. And we saw some underlining themes from those definitions. That's how we understood public administration. So we could profess certain definitions from on our own. And I said, so what would be your definition of public administration? And we also saw the importance of public administration. We realized that it's good because it makes us makes governance continue. Okay, the government machinery is not halted because of public administration. Amongst all these, we saw a little bit of history. And so today we will continue with the introduction, but we will be looking at the evolution, as in the how the discipline of public administration has been to date. And so previously or last 2 weeks, we realized that it is both theory and practice. And so we saw that it has been in existence for a very long time as a practice, but as a discipline, it has not been so. Please pardon me, my background is noisy because of a neighbor's carpentry issues. I can't stop them, so please pardon me. So you
Okay,
may
it's
hear
okay.
you hear noise. Yeah. Right. So today we will just look at the evolution as part of the introduction. Okay, so how has the discipline, not the practice has been for a very long time, for time immemorial. How has the discipline been nurtured for us to even study it as students now. Okay, so we'll be looking at the phases of the evolution and then the progress that has made so far. So this is a recap of what we did. We said that it is Willie Wilson who tried to um, bring in this whole argument of separating politics from administration, and we'll see him in the stages as well because he is a father of public administration, as we have realized. Okay, so there are 5 stages to um, the evolution. In other readings, you may see 6, 7, or 8, but if we are okay with what the traditional um, evolution state, for the rest, you would even be able to um, talk about it, okay, in terms of technology and so on and so forth. But these 5 are very core. okay, for us to understand. And at our level, we are just doing introduction. So at our level, the five would be okay for us. Okay. The first is the politics administration dichotomy. So if you remember, we said Woodrow Wilson was the one who tried to separate politics from administration, and he wrote an article to that effect. So he's known as the father of public administration. And so the first stage is the politics administration dichotomy. The second is the principles of administration. Okay, the third is the era of challenges. The fourth is the crisis of identity, and the fifth is the public policy perspectives. Means that since 1971 until date, we are in the 2026 now. You realize that so many things have happened, but public policy is still what is going on, and we realize that technology and other things it's infiltrating. Okay, and so we are having a blend of so many things. When we get to the public policy perspective, would appreciate that. Okay, so these five are what we'll be looking at, and I suffice it to say that you would be better off trying to um go according to the eras. Okay, you shouldn't mix the crisis of identity maybe at the second position and then bring principles of administration. It doesn't help in understanding. So in our discussion, let's try to go by those eras. I usually don't emphasize the dates, okay, because sometimes the students may confuse it. But if you're able to recall, that's very good, okay. But I don't punish if you don't bring the dates, okay. But if you look at it very well, you realize some 10 years differences, okay, and between them. Okay, all right. Now let's look at the first one, the politics. So in recapping, we will try and recap all these five, okay? The first is politics administration dichotomy, which you and I should not forget, okay? And Woodrow Wilson was the one who tried to separate it because of the spoils in the system. And recall that we said that because of corruption issues, because of nepotism issues, where parties, cronies will come to power, and then when they are leaving, you must sack all of them. Okay, that's the spoil system. Okay, these things were going on. That's how come Woodrow Wilson was just saying that if that be the case, why don't you separate political science or politics from the administrators, or how whatever policies are created are implemented. Okay, so you separate them so that nobody will come and say that you there's a corrupt um, individual who is trying to siphon resources to another individual, and so on and so forth. And he had other scholars buttressing this point or supporting him. Okay, so and in academia, when you have research going on, you have articles going on, you have to give us proof. Okay, you have to give us evidence, and so papers will be written, and then critiques and other things will be going on. Frank Goodnow and L.D. White were major contributors to this dichotomy because they tried to bring up books to even start up the discipline. So this was the era where um, people started studying public administration. Bear in mind that it was separated from political science. So we'll take a scenario, for instance. Let's say you go to the University of Ghana, for instance, you have the political science department, then you have the public administration department. So that's the kind of separation is what we are talking about, because they try to give an argument for it to be separated, to be studied as a discipline. But if you go to political science department, for instance, you will still see public administration being studied under the structures of political science. Okay, so you see that it's not so broad. But when you go to the department in the business school, for instance, of of University of Ghana, you see it's studied very well. Also see, look at GIMPA to studies public administration separately. It is because of this separation from political science. That's how come it's a discipline now. Okay, so Frank Goodnow and other scholars try to reiterate the fact that it is very impossible for us to do that, bringing up several arguments, okay, in articles and the like. And then Goodnow emphasize that politics has to do with policies and expressions of the state's will and blah, 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 as you and I saw the previous time. And he also emphasized the part of the arms of government who is responsible for this um, 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 administration. Okay, so it's the executive, and you and I recall that we emphasized this already. So bringing an emphasis to this and trying to saying that you buttress the point and writing articles or bringing books for students to study means that still the public administration has been separated for that matter and should be studied and as a separate discipline. So this guy, LD White, okay, also tried to um bring a textbook on administration. So imagine that you are a student of public administration. Now you have an entire textbook to study how administration should be done and other scholars of in history and the like, okay. Just to make sure that the things that made the separation would not okay. So these are the people, Frank Goodnow and LD White. This one you shouldn't forget. There are others, okay, who try to um, uphold the separation. Right. Then came um, the principles of administration, where universal principles, okay, are supposed to help us understand um, how to do administration. Bear in mind that this is public administration, but in case of doing public administration, we want certain principles. It means that these principles should guide you to do administration everywhere, wherever you find yourself in every country or so on and so forth. Now, these people also supported the dichotomy. So you see, this is how you even remember it that you had people supporting the dichotomy with Frank Goodnow and L.D. White supporting the Wilsonian line. And then the principles of administration also supported. In that sense, they are trying to bring up some principles to help us do administration. So, for instance, let's say I, in place of Woodrow Wilson, tried to separate politics from administration. And then you, the students, are now saying that, okay, so these are some principles that they are universal principles, and we think that it can help in doing administration. Okay, so now the students are trying to bring up certain principles. Now, those then during that time, Taylor and Wilson Taylor was professing scientific management. Okay, his scientific management was in vogue during that time because he applied scientific principles to everything that had to be done. Okay, he was an engineer, but he tried to bring science to help us do whatever we do in organizations because he wanted to achieve efficiency, wanted to achieve economy, achieve good productivity. So remember that in our definition, we realize that administration, public administration borrows from other disciplines. Okay, so because it is now a growing discipline, you can't just get principles any from the discipline itself, from public administration. You must borrow from other disciplines. So the principles of administration with scientific management and being an anchor, okay, was borrowed. Others, okay, also came in line, but um, Taylor Taylor's scientific management was very much in focus because during that time it was used in every area. Okay, now in our subsequent lectures, we'll be looking at the theory, some of the theories of public administration, and we'll come back to scientific management as to how he went about it. He did not like the idea of trying to um, figure out using common sense or a rule of thumb to do things, but applying science like observation and other things and find one best way to do the thing. So if you have to um, um, collect sand, for instance, if you have to collect sand to do a particular project, there is one best way of collecting sand to the project site. Okay, irrespective of the number of times or the number of activities that will be going on or the things that you think that will be proper, there will be one best way, the scientific best way to do it. Okay, that's scientific management, and it was applied to public administration, or it was borrowed for us to use to do public administration. So the principles of administration era was trying to use certain principles, universal principles, to be able to do public administration properly. Now, apart from Frederick Taylor, we had others coming in, and I said that when a discipline is coming up, you may have other scholars coming in, critiquing and talking about it or emphasizing the important areas. Okay, Willoughby also gave us a certain principle, so it means that as a student, you know that this is what you'll be using in terms of principles. This is the principles that you'll be looking at. In fact, a whole book. Others also try to look at that in that vein. Okay, and so irrespective, I've stated that already. Irrespective of the country or your settings or whatever, you should be able to apply those principles. People like Henry Fayol will be will be looking at his principles. Then um, Mary Parker Foley, and then Rowley and Mooney all try to bring up certain principles. And so you see the names of their books and other things trying to emphasize the fact that these are the things that you'd have to consider when you are doing administration. Imagine that as a student, you have to read all these books to be able to practice public administration. This era was inundated with so many things, but Garlic and Urich's paper on science of administration brought a standard to all that others were saying, okay? And it was Garlic who tried to bring this principle of post-cop, which is still being used and also emphasized by Henry Fayol, okay, where post-cop stands for planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. You realize that in your principles of business administration, you may have come across these things. Okay. Now, all these principles were trying to help us do administration with all these authors. All right. Now, it's the case that uh, it's not always the case that you'll be able to apply all these principles in your jurisdiction. So, for instance, Ghana, we are a developing country, and we may not even have the knowledge in terms of budgeting or something. Okay, that's just by the way, just an example. Or what may be happening in India may be different from what may be happening in the US. So trying to box everything up to say that we have to follow scientific principles or universal principles, as they said, was not always going to be easy. Okay, so you had other critics also coming in. Why would you say that you can't have your values attached to the principles that you'll be doing? It means that whenever you're applying the principles, okay, as an administrator, you don't have to employ any value. It means that you should not be biased. Whatever we say that you have to apply, like protocol, that should be the case. But we can't be the case. So you had others critiquing. This is how scholars do their thing. Okay, like you as a scholar, when you get to your project work, you may also critique another person's work. All right. So we had other scholars trying to critique that the fact that you are telling us about principles, it means that it can't be universal as you claim. You can't do public administration the way you are trying to do it. Okay. There are there are a bunch of fallacies or there are a bunch of proverbs. Okay. They are universal things. Why should we be saying that this is the way to go? Okay, so Herbert Simon, one of the critics, okay, was and was just brought up several other things to look at in place of the principles of administration. Okay. Now, they also try to debunk the fact that administration should not be separated from politics. So this era of challenge the fact that there can't be universal principles. And they also challenge the fact that you cannot separate politics from administration. And then you have to consider the different types of organizations that you have, irrespective of the fact that it is public. We have different personalities, okay, within the organization. We have different environments, okay, different country. Look at the developing country, for instance, and you are saying that we should apply a universal principle to it. So these are the critiques that were and so Chester Barnard also criticized it. Okay, and he also questioned the um, the mechanistic view of organization. You see, the principles of administration were trying to see human beings as robots, kind of. Okay, where there will be no um, communication or kind of cooperation because we know that it's a principle, so we just have to follow it. It means that there will be no informal relationships and so on and so forth. So Chester Barnard did not uphold that view at all. Okay, and then his book, in the functions of the executive, he reiterated the fact that organizations should not be viewed in a mechanistic way, okay, but there should be formal, informal relationships, okay, and there should be communication, cooperation, and so on and so forth. Then Herbert Simon also came up with so many things, and he is known as the one who said that these principles are mere proverbs. Okay, so he was trying to say that whatever they are saying in terms of principles is so contradictory. You cannot find its root in any form of science apart from what Frederick Taylor in scientific management is trying to pinpoint to POSCOP in terms of planning and blah 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 cannot be tested scientifically. Rather, we should be emphasizing decision making. So it's Herbert Simon who tried to um, propose the view that decision making should be a rigid principle, or should be the heart of public administration, because every individual or every organization has some form of bounded rationality, okay, where you have limited information and you have limited capacity to your cognition. It means that as administrator, you can't solve all problems. Okay, but you have to take decisions, but you are bounded, okay, in terms of the information you have, depending on the kind of information you have and the way you can think. That is where you how you decide or make decisions. That is Herbert Simon's argument. So he's saying that this is how administration should be done. So it means that we have to be doing decision making, having in mind that we are all limited in our cognition. So then we have to borrow from other disciplines. So that is where psychology and sociology, okay, were the main precepts that came in to help solve this issue. You have to not dealing with the classical issues as the principles of administration is saying, but borrow from other areas, because we are limited as human beings. We are limited. So sometimes an economic theory would solve the problem. Why don't you borrow it? Sometimes a sociological problem issue would solve the problem, or a sociological theory. Sometimes a psychology. Why don't you just open or broaden your mind and stop this principles, which is not, which cannot be universal. Now, this was the argument, so this was the era of challenge. Challenge because the principles were challenged, the dichotomy was challenged. Robert Dahl emphasized this again, that that mechanistic view, okay, that you are talking about cannot help us do administration well. Okay, but we have to look at the entire psychological man, okay, where we need to borrow from others. This was the time that um, um, Elton Mayo also tried to give us some studies, okay, known as the Hawthorne studies. So in our subsequent lectures, we would understand human relations movement, where Abraham Maslow also comes in. You see, it is gearing towards psychology. So the Hawthorne's experiments try to give us the need for informal relationships, so informal principles, not the formal principles that those people spoke about. But sometimes there are informal things that you would want to consider to be able to solve problems, or to be able to um, do administration properly, in terms of leadership, in terms of motivation. You realize that these principles that we've seen does not consider um, human beings as in they need to be motivated. All that they needed to have as a motivation was money, especially with Frederick Taylor. Okay, but in terms of the Hawthorne studies, you have to recognize informal relationships and leadership issues, okay, so that you will be able to do administration properly. So the Hawthorne studies by Elton Mayer, and then Herbert Simon's arguments of decision making with Robert Dahl and the rest, all challenged the principles of administration and the dichotomy. So in this period, it means that it will be leading us to somewhere, which is the crisis of identity. Right. Please, do you understand till this point?
Yes,
This is
please.
this is like telling a story. Okay, all right.
Madam, we are
So
following.
first, all right, okay. Thank God you are following. So first, there is a dichotomy where we know that politics is trying to be is trying was separated from um, administration because of the spoils of the system. Then there was a principles of administration which buttresses that point. Okay, which said yes, there should be a separation. These principles will help. These universal principles will help. Okay. Then scientific management and others followed with post-corp saying that this is what you have to do. Then there was an era of challenge, a challenge saying that we don't want this because it is not true that we can have universal principles. Okay, with Heather Simon championing and Chester Barnard also championing, saying that we need to consider informal relationships, cooperation, communication, and others, and decision making, considering that man is cognitively not always having that capacity to deal with all these principles, but you have to borrow from other disciplines. This led to some kind of identity crisis because if we have started a discipline and we are boxing on, we are going on trying to employ some principles and you have come to punch holes into it, then who are we now? We are trying to leave the political science department. Now there is chaos. So there's an identity crisis because the dichotomy issues was not helping. Okay, and then the principles of administration was also not helping. So most scholars were not seeing where they were lying. Okay, they don't know which umbrella they were lying. They had to go back. Some had to go under the umbrella of political science again. Imagine going back to you as a student, going back to political science to study and public administration. You'll be mocked, right? It wouldn't even sound well. That was what was happening. Some went back to the umbrella science, that's political science. That was where it was hewn from. And then others went to administrative science. Okay, so there was that back and forth or the blending of public administration. In that space, okay, there was a lost identity. It's okay because it's a discipline that is trying to be built. So that's what happened. Okay, that's what happened. But there were young scholars, okay, Waldo was a champion of that, who said that no, we can't go back and this way, all right. And so they try to they try to think about what to do in terms of this new discipline that we are in love with. Okay, it means that sometimes the old folks may be doing something wrong. They started it all right, but maybe they are not fresh in what is happening. So he used Waldo tried to have youngsters, fresh brains, okay, below 35, okay, to hold a conference. And that was the Minnowbrook Conference, okay, in 1968, and trying to judge or to think about the discipline because there was an identity crisis. And during this time, so many things were deliberated on. Okay, and these books were edited. Okay, the Middlebrook perspective, and then uh, towards a new public administration, the Middlebrook perspective, and then public administration in a time of turbulence. You understand where they are coming from. In fact, there was turbulence, but they tried to think through, and indeed they gave several ideas, and so e- after every 10 years, they were going back, deliberate on what um, public administration should be looking at. So after 1968, they went back. So that was Minnowbrook Conference 2. Then we had Minnowbrook Conference 3. Okay, the first one gave birth to new public administration. Okay, and so it tried to look at certain themes, okay, apart from what the predecessors or the old scholars try to look at. They try to look at what exactly public administration should be like. We had four themes from the Minnowbrook conference, and that encompasses the new public administration. They were saying that whatever should be done in terms of administration, public-wise, it should have relevance. So enough of the traditional thing of dichotomy and blah, 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 blah. We know that it is the public that we are serving, or it is the public interest we are serving, okay? Societal problems should be relevant, or whatever you be doing in terms of administration, it should be relevant to the society. So in terms of our Ghanaian um, settings, for instance, we will say that in terms of new public administration, apart from the so-called dichotomy and principles or whatever, what we'll be looking at is our flooding issues, for instance. Okay, that is what we should be looking at, and not always looking at efficiency and economy and the likes, but the most important issues, right? Another issue was issue of values. Okay, you realize that the the principles of administration did not um, um, subscribe to um, um, value issues and value um, they upheld value neutrality. That is, they didn't want any form of bias in your administration, meaning that whatever you do as an administrator, your your public bias, your biases shouldn't come in. And then the era of challenges challenged it and said that it cannot be possible because human beings are human beings. Okay, we are bounded by some kind of rationality. Okay, and so they came back. They went to the conference again and emphasized this point again that it's very difficult to just take your emotions away from, or your biases from whatever you are doing. Okay, but it should be to the public good, for the public good. Okay, whatever values that you be having in terms of public administration, you should help the public good. So, for instance, you are supposed to be emotional when there is a flood, for instance, not necessarily be like a robot or a machine and applying principles. Okay, so you may say that because of the flooding issues, you are allocating as government or a public administration, you are allocating certain resources or an amount of resource to so and so, or to help solve the problem, or you'd want to buy certain equipment for those security agents so that they'll be able to solve the issues up hand, or that will even motivate them to work harder. This means that there will be no value neutrality, but it is for the public good. So at the Middlebrook conference, this theme was emphasized because it is just to serve the public. So if it is to serve the public, why not? Why can't you just go ahead and be a little bit value biased, okay, so that you'll be able to solve the pressing issues. Remember the relevant issues, and I'm using the flooding issue as an example. If we could even use the COVID issues, for instance, where we may have to allocate more resources. Another example is, for instance, when you are an administrator, for instance, and you realize that a public administrator, you realize that with your NHI, for instance, there you have more cancer or kidney issues. Okay, and then you realize that you have to, by law, you have to go to parliament or have an ally to be able to allocate more resources to solve those cancer issues. It means that you cannot be value neutral. Okay, you have emotions. You can be biased. Okay, but biased towards the people because they are the ones who are serving. So you'll be biased in trying to make allocating, let's say, 200,000 to cancer issues, and then 100,000 to malaria issues because you think that is the most pressing needs. And please, have I explained the value issues um, clearly. Then we move on to the equity issues, where we have social equity. You'd have to, the Minobu conference is saying that when we want to do public administration, we should be concerned with social equity, where we want distributive functions, okay, or governmental institutions distributed among the populace, and not have one-sided institutions or things crowded at one place. For instance, if you want anything, you have to come to Accra, or you have to go to Kumasi, or the public uh, in the urban areas, okay? No, we should try as much as possible to distribute every function and every governmental institution so that it will reach the people. And DVLA is trying to um, do that, and NHIS is also trying to do that. But sometimes you realize that, especially with some of the health facilities which are not in most um, remote areas, you will have to um, travel for a very long time. Even internet, it's not helping. But from this conference since 1968, mm, it is still even relevant that we have to have some social equity to be able to do public administration properly. And this leads to the kind of change that we want. That if you want to serve equity, then you have to bring some kind of change in the life of the people. All right, we have to reduce the disparities. If you reduce disparities, it means that most of um, um, uh, our social societal needs would be adhered to. Okay, we would have a lot of opportunities to help us. Okay, and these are some of the issues that were brought up. The subsequent Minobu conference dealt with other issues, but these were relevant issues that shaped public administration moving forward. And so, even though people were trying to draw back to political science and administrative science, the understanding of these issues made the discipline move on. Okay, it wasn't nipped in the bud, but it's it was upheld as a discipline. Okay, so from 1971 onwards, the discipline was becoming interdisciplinary because right from the era of challenge, you realize that you have to borrow from other disciplines, well, psychology, sociology, and the like. And then from the Middlebrook conference, we realized that it is societal issues. We're trying to serve the public good. And that was the most important thing that we had to look at. And so public policy was also um, um, was at the peak of whatever we were trying to do. Because if we want to solve a societal problem, let's say, for instance, the flooding issues, and we don't have maybe a policy in place to cater for that, it means that we'll have to go to parliament. The legislature will try to work on it so that it will be implemented by the executive. So, henceforth, or since 1971, it has been policy, 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 and policy. Because anytime you want to serve the public good, you will have to implement a policy. Or if the policy is not there, you would have to um, try and go through the process of um, formulating a policy first, or getting a law backing whatever you want to do, then trying to implement it. So, like this free SHS, for instance, or when we had FQ for a very long time, where we want free compulsory universal education for our young children. we know that it is important. So that policy can be in place. We know that students should be fed in school so that they'll be kept in school, so that they will not um, um, give excuses for not being in school. It means that that policy must be in place. Okay, so even though the that dichotomy issues was not upheld, okay, we know that definitely the politicians will come in, but as in trying to help the individual, we have to sometimes we throw our politics away and help the individuals. So sometimes you realize that even the politicians, when they talk about issues to some extent, they will say that no, this one we should not politicize it. Okay, it means that in fact, if we had looked at the societal problems and really try to solve society's problems, we wouldn't have been here now, mm, with our flooding issues and other things. But may God help us to help each other anyway. And so to date, administrative science has come in. Those principles, okay, the administrative science helps us to um, learn how to operate organizations, okay, to how organizations operate and so on and so forth. And you realize that even the issues of political science, we still borrow from it. So with all those long arguments that started from the beginning, the traditional arguments, we have not thrown them away. But depending on the situation, that is where you try to use whatever you think may be appropriate and for the problem. Okay, so all the management techniques are still involved. So we may say that we use contingency and theories, okay, to be able to deal with our administrative issues and in terms of public administration. But it is public policy that we're trying to look at. Now, from 1971 till now, you realize that it has been a very long time, okay? And so technology issues have come in. You realize that we have issues of trying to have e-governance, or yes, e-governance issues, where you even have e-procurement issues coming in. When technology is in the system, we try as much as possible to leave the human faces, so that corruption will not be so rampant. And then you also realize that even the public and the private sector is blaring. Last week or last week, somebody was trying to um, raise a question on this enterprises issue, and I said, oh yes, that they are supposed to even make profits. The public enterprises are supposed to provide goods for the public, but when they are supposed to make profits, they it's supposed to go back to help um the public, okay? And now, because we have new public management, we want to use market issues, okay? Meaning that we are borrowing from the um, business people, trying to make profit, make some returns. A government institution cannot always be making losses like that. We want to make progress. We want to get some capital to build more hospitals. And so we have to learn from how the business people are making their profit. So there must be competition. There must be customer orientation. It shouldn't be that people will just be saying that is the work for your father, is the work for your father at public institutions. No, we should be customer oriented. All these issues have um, emerged within this 1971 till date, and you and I will even be able to recall some of the new things that have been coming in. But the bedrock is that it is because of policy issues, okay, because we want to solve societal problems, and we want to have more market returns, or the returns for our our investment or our taxes. Okay, we want to get more returns, and we realize that it has become more interdisciplinary as well. Okay, we borrow from other um courses depending on the situation we want to solve. Okay, and we also realize that we are trying to get issues of accountability coming in. That is why we want to emphasize the use of technology, having digital services, having e-governance, and so on and so forth. So this is where we are now. We trying as public administrators to try as much as possible to incorporate all these in whatever we do as administrators. We borrow from other disciplines if need be. And then we try as much as possible to serve the public. Any questions? I've done all the talking today because it's kind of history. Any question? But do we understand we understand in our readings we may come across so many things. It's quite a long lengthy thing, but I've tried to um, shorten it. Please, do you understand where we have come now? That is how come you are studying public administration, because now we have so many things infiltrated in it. Now we have finance, we have HR, all in public administration. But we won't look at this because this is just introduction. So depending on your specialization, all the specialization issues, you would have the public sector to it. So you have public sector accounting, you have HR issues, and so on and so forth. So it is so broad. That's how come if you are interested, you may even do your master's in public administration, and it's quite interesting.
Okay.
Any questions? If there are no questions, I will. Have you accessed the e-learning platform and the LMS?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I will put the the theories over there. So
Okay.
these theories, the principles of administration.
Oh,
This was where the principles of administration. This was where the theories, organizational theory was coming in. So we'll look at some of the theory. There are lots, but we'll look at about only five. Okay? And then we'll apply it to um, public administration. So every theory will be applied to public administration. God willing, next week we'll be doing that.
okay. Please, I want to ask, thank you very much for your explanation. And um, all right. So according to the key scholars, we have Woodrow Wilson, Frank J. Goodnow, and then L.D. Wise. Are these the only key scholars, or there
No,
are
no, no,
other?
no, no, no. There are lots. There are
Okay.
lots. There are lots. There are lots. But we just choose the prominent ones. There are more
Okay.
prominent ones. Even with the scientific management, you hear only Taylor, but the Gilberts were the ones who were even doing more research.
Okay.
Okay. There are lots of them.
So are their names here because they are, how do I put it?
Yes, they pioneered. They brought up. They How do I put it? They gave us um they championed or they
Uh-huh.
pioneered certain things which we cannot we cannot how do you what's the word, we cannot ignore. So
Okay.
for instance, say this guy, LD White brought a textbook. At least we should acknowledge him in trying to understand the depth of the discipline. That's all. And others also brought him,
Mm, okay.
but he was the first, kind of.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So there are lots, lots.
So let's say some years to come and other people come up with theories that are way better than theirs. Will
Like
they,
yours, like yourself.
Yes, like me.
Yes, yes, like yourself.
Will it override what
It's
they
it no yes yes, but you have to acknowledge. Yeah, you see, in academia we acknowledge whoever said something, but would also say yours. We also say that yes, but this person also said like like Herbert Simon also said that they are mere proverbs. You
Okay,
see, you also say something, but you have to give us evidence.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. We pray that one day yours to
Oh, oh yes, we have to. We don't have to be to fear. In
yeah,
academia, anything you do, you it will be criticized. So if you don't like criticism, you can't be in it. Okay, but it's good.
yeah,
At least you have proposed something, and then somebody will debunk it, and so on and so forth. Huh.
no,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Okay. So, God willing, next week, we'll do the theories.
Okay,
All
okay.
right.
Thank you very much.
All right. My regards to everybody. Those who were
Definitely.
not here.
Thank you,
Yes.
madam.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.